One man band created by Denis Terashenko that started as a black metal project, but then turned into something, and I quote, blackened heavy metal. In other words, instrumental mind, something close to heavy metal, but the voice with a more raw and extreme approach that would really be more suitable to a black metal project. Not only the two things together are hard to assimilate, but also the production itself, especially the drums that seem to be programmed, don't sound very organic. Lyrically, it is a bit more interesting since it is a concept album about the recent elections in Belarus.
Xavier Boscher is one of the great French guitarists, with his path having had relevance in metal, but where he then went down a solo path that took him down more esoteric paths in terms of concept and musically by an approach between fusion jazz and even ambient. Starseed's Eye is the latest chapter in his solo career that brings some weight back and is the first of 4 chapters, where Xavier aims to explore a spiritual awakening he had and of the origins of his own soul. Melodic, with some progressive leanings, but without forgetting that half jazzy and ambient component mentioned above. Musical excellence that fans of the instrumental or simply progressive genre, supported by guitars, will not be indifferent.
Second album from the Austrians, who present a hard and heavy that has so much of classic but also shows with capacity to surprise. The production is in the perfect spot where we have power but also an organic feeling, and to sound like heavy metal, it is not necessarily a solution to have a rotten production. But then we have delightful details like the guitar and sax duel in the solos of High Under Pressure. Classic feeling, but some boldness that may not be enough for those who never saw Hard and Heavy in a passionate way, but for those who feel that passion, this is a very good album.
Overkill are one of the few old-school bands that manage to keep expectations high for new work and that can't let us down. Which is exactly what happened with Scorched, their 20th album. 20 albums where, despite some qualitative ups and downs, the constant was always heavy music. And unlike some classics that still endure, Overkill belongs to the group of bands that have managed to keep the creative glow without presenting more of the same and without depersonalizing a dynamic identity with almost 40 years of history. Scorched presents itself to the service as a heavy album, full of grit and full of dynamics, without fillers. The classics are the classics, untouchable. But in a few years, this too may well be a classic. It would be nothing to be shocked about.
The definition of frustration is to be faced with something that we know is well done, but still lacks the arguments to convince us of its quality, or also a way to define dogma. Very catchy melodies, the kind that have the pop gift of sticking to your brain. Wait, but never enough to take away the very deep veneer of such melodies and a feeling we can't shake that we are in the presence of something much more plastic than desirable. Fans of more generic metalcore will be able to appreciate it while we had a hard time.
Record debut of another Portuguese heavy metal project. Something good to verify that the traditional sounds continue to emerge in the underground. Dolmen brings together veterans of the Portuguese scene, with members and ex-members of bands like Midnight Priest and Ravensire, and have the particularity of presenting themselves with a vocalist, Ana, who has a voice that fits very well into the more epic heavy metal genre. Enthusiasm that generates enough to look forward to the next release.
A great surprise was this album by Dark Age Ruin, who started their career on Selvajaria Records and started it in the best way. A lot of brutality, courtesy of a full production, but at the same time sharp as befits Scandinavian. Inspired harsh black metal, although we can consider this to be a one-dimensional album, this does not mean that it is devoid of dynamics. Its strong point are the riffs that manage to be memorable and quite varied. In fact, instrumentally, this is a very powerful album. Vocally, there are no big surprises, but the approach, even without great variations, fits this record like a glove. Good debut in the Portuguese black metal underground.
Excellent surprise, Parity Boot. The band released a debut album in 2009, which we didn't know about, so we were completely blank for this second one, released 14 years later, and what it presents is quite refreshing, despite not being exactly original, and that too was once more of a problem than it is today. It's an approach to industrial that relies heavily on metallic heaviness, often reminding us of that possibility that no one thought of having Devin Townsend cover Anil Nathrak. It goes straight in, and the melodic levels are sky high, but it doesn't take anything away from the heaviness that makes it all the more exciting. Excellent comeback album.